While it never outright tells you, and honestly barely even hints at it, everything in your Terraria world has deep lore behind it. From the guide NPC, to the biomes, Moonlord, and even beyond the game with creatures like Cthulhu, there is a ton of information that fully explains why your world is what it is. So that's why, in today's video, I'm going to fully explain all of Terraria's lore. Terraria's lore is explained to us in these 5 pages of paper, with the first page starting out by explaining that the land is full of mystery and wonder, but that a few legends have been passed down through a group known as the Order of the Guide. The Order of the Guide is where the guide in your world comes from, with their goal being to just pass down knowledge to one another each generation, which is also how your guide knows every crafting recipe. After explaining how this information got to you through the guides, the first page goes on to explain that the gods established a balance to guarantee fairness for all living creatures, including the world itself, since it's also a sentient being. The world is able to read the thoughts of the creatures in it, and when the desired balance goes off tilt a bit, it will use the Hallow, Corruption, and Crimson biomes as its violent defense mechanisms to restore the balance to the correct spot. And that ends up being the end of the first page, with the second and first half of the third pages being dedicated to explaining the 3 evil biomes, starting with the Crimson. The Crimson is a single living being connected directly to each world, with all of them sharing a hive mind with the sole goal of restoring the balance at all costs. Thousands of other Terraria worlds have been completely absorbed by it, alongside many misguided people raising the Crimson into the level of a deity, complete with sacrifices, which later become the enemies you fight while in the biome. After that dark section, we move on to the second half of page 2, which explains the Corruption. This biome is a quote-unquote cancer caused by the sins of those living in the world, with vile actions and thoughts feeding the growth of it as it spreads throughout the world. This biome knows nothing but to consume everything it touches, which leaves behind creatures full of hate. After the Corruption has restored the balance, it destroys all life in the world, turning it into a desolate abyss. And moving on to the first half of page 3, we get the final evil biome explained to us, which is the Hallow. Within each world, there is a guardian who serves as the world's master and core. Once this creature is destroyed through beating the wall of flesh, the world will release the ancient spirits of light and dark to expedite the process of finding a new guardian. This is when the Hallow first gets created in a world, with it functioning as an overcompensation of purity taken to the extreme. The Hallow attempts to eliminate any threat that would violate the critical balance of life, regardless of whether it's friend, foe, or neutral party. Ultimately, the Hallow serves to push back against the never-ceasing encroachment of control. After that, we finally get to start into the actual story behind Terraria, starting with Cthulhu. While not in the actual game, Cthulhu is a part of the lore, and arrived long ago with an unknown origin, with the sole purpose of destruction, alongside having dominion over all of the sentient life in your world. Everything seemed to be a precipice of doom up until the Dryads stepped up to the plate. While we only have one of them in the game, originally they were a big group, but during the fight with Cthulhu, almost all of them perished, outside of one, which is the one that later ends up moving into your world. They didn't win the fight with Cthulhu, but they also didn't exactly lose either, with them breaking up Cthulhu's body into 4 parts. With all of those parts later becoming some of the bosses you fight in your game, like Skeletron, Eye of Cthulhu, the Eater of Worlds, and the Brain of Cthulhu. After this big fight, Cthulhu ended up having to retreat to the dark side of the moon because of the damage it took, and nothing happened for a long time after that. But eventually, rumors started popping up about a lunatic cult trying to revive Cthulhu to its former power. To make this happen, they first needed to make mechanical versions of all 4 parts that Cthulhu had lost, so that way he could be whole again. But apparently, nobody in this group had any mechanical skills, so they had to opt for kidnapping the mechanic NPC and forcing her to build these parts. She wasn't the only NPC to get caught up in this mess either, as the old man and everyone living in the dungeon, which was once a thriving city full of life, were put under a spell that turned them into mindless, undead servants of evil. But luckily, this is where you finally come into the story, with your goal being to stop the cult from being successful in reviving Cthulhu. And while that's all of the official lore from the pages, there are still some loose ends that need to be cleaned up, starting with the mechanic. While the group originally wanted her to make 4 parts, story-wise, you end up rescuing her before she finishes the 4th and final part. Which is why we only end up with Skeletron Prime, the twins, and the Destroyer, instead of there also being a mechanical brain. And the other loose end is, of course, what happened to Cthulhu, and what is Moonlord? While it's heavily implied that Moonlord is the weakened form of Cthulhu, it's never directly confirmed to be so. And Relogic has also stated that the lore is really whatever the player deems it to be. So, at the end of the day, Cthulhu and Moonlord's lore really comes down to whatever you feel like fits the picture. And while that was all of the official lore, with some parts filled in at the end by me to make things make sense regardless of your Terraria knowledge, you probably still have a few questions about all this. The first, and probably most important question you have is, what importance does the lore have in the actual gameplay? And the answer to that is almost none at all. While there are some nods to it through things like NPC dialogue, there's nothing actually in-game relating to it. The lore was only released to celebrate Terraria's 8th anniversary, and the creator of Terraria has stated that the only concrete lore is what you see in the game, which is vague enough that it really comes down to what you think it all means. Now, another question you might have is, where did that image of Cthulhu come from? Well, while Cthulhu was never actually added to the game, the main sprite artist for Terraria up until around January 2012 made this image as concept art. It was never used in any official way, but since it was made, it has been floating around the community as a fun idea of what Cthulhu could look like. And that wraps up this video. While many have most likely already known of my first Terraria lore video, I made that right when I first started using YouTube, so the quality was pretty bad, and since it's been over 2 years since then, I just decided to go ahead and remake it. Thanks for sticking to the end. Be sure to like and subscribe for more Terraria videos like this in the future. And, as always, make sure to have a wonderful day.